News Talk 610 AM and 102.1 FM. KBNU.
KBNU News Time is 4:03. I'm Bill Walter with this news update brought to you by Logan Extermination. Law enforcement is reminding recreationists to always have a buddy when heading into the mountains. That advice comes after search and rescue were called out to help a man stranded on the Wellsville Mountains. This occurred late last night. Cache County Sheriff Sergeant Dave Welker said the 45-year-old man called 911 around 8:30 p.m. The man, who had only lived in the valley for about a year, told dispatch operators he was stranded somewhere below the Wellsville Cone. The hiker had set out from the Deep Canyon trailhead above Mendon earlier in the day. After reaching the top of the canyon, he traveled south along the ridge before making it to the summit. Welker said after the hiker made it to the cone, he decided to leave the trail and try and hike straight down the face of the mountain, concerned he was running out of daylight. The hiker thought he was above Coldwater Lake, but was actually above Maple Rise. That area is very steep with thick brush and trees. Search and rescue teams set up a command center at Wellsville Elementary. The hiker was able to provide dispatch operators the GPS coordinates where he was. He also said he only had water and jerky, but no flashlight or overnight clothing. Due to the terrain and dark conditions, Welker explained that searchers utilized a DPS helicopter to assist them. The chopper was able to fly over the area and locate the hiker clinging to a tree on the side of the mountain. The chopper was able to fly back over the area and hoist the hiker off the mountain, transporting him to the elementary school. Welker said the hiker was in good spirits and did not require any medical attention. KBNU News Time is 4:05. KBNU weather for tonight, mostly clear skies, overnight low around 60. And hot weather is back with us Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, with highs each day in the mid-90s, mostly sunny skies. It's been to 87. It's 87 right now at KBNU. Bring back the sounds you've been missing. Schedule a free hearing evaluation with Dr. Paul Daines at Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology. Call 753-HEAR, 753-HEAR.
It's been a crazy few months with big rainstorms fueling the weeds in your lawn, garden, or empty lot, and the spiders coming inside to beat the heat. You need help. Let Logan Extermination take care of those pesky weeds and unwanted pests with an exterior lawn application and interior treatment for bugs. Call Logan Extermination today before your home becomes enemy territory. Logan Extermination, 752-8450.
Weed control starts at $45. Interior spider spray starts at $95.
KBNU News Time is 4:06. Many of those that settled the community of Providence were of German and Swiss heritage. From early on, sauerkraut was a staple food item in many city households. And after a lull some years back, Sauerkraut Days is back with a full week of activities this week. On KBNU's For the People program on Friday, Providence Mayor Kathleen Alder talked about its significance for the city.
What's exciting to us as a city is that this particular celebration has always been citizen-driven, even when it first started out, and it kind of waned a little bit. After a few years, we had some setbacks where we were producing sauerkraut, and the health department didn't like the way we were producing it, so they shut it down, and which is their job, I guess. But now we're back.
Also on the program were organizers Nicole Bone and Ashley Poole. Nicole said she's glad it's back.
We were approached, I guess, a couple years ago about, in fact, Mayor Kathleen Alder approached me and just said, would you be interested in helping bring this back to our community? And I think we were both pretty excited to take this on. And again, going back to beginning on Monday, we have such a rich heritage in Providence. Providence was founded in 1859. We are the second, next to Wellsville, second community to be founded here in Cache Valley.
One of the kickoff events is the Downtown Historic Tour, sponsored by CBTD and the Old Rock Church. That's this evening from 6 to 8 p.m. And the famous Sauerkraut Can Hunt is back and runs until Friday at the latest. And we'll find out more about some of the other activities in later KBNU newscasts as activities take place all week. You can always get the full rundown of the activities on Providence Sauerkraut Days on their Facebook and Instagram pages. One person died after a crash between a pickup truck and a motorcycle Sunday night in Cedar City. Cedar City police said the accident occurred around 9:40 p.m. on State Route 130. Based on the investigation, it's believed that the truck failed to give the right-of-way to the motorcycle when turning north onto the highway. The bike crashed into the door of the truck, then the truck continued north and went off the road before crashing into the vacuums at a car wash where it came to a stop. The driver of the truck, a 77-year-old man from Washington City, died at the scene despite attempts to perform life-saving measures. The motorcyclist was taken to the hospital via medical helicopter in critical condition. He is a 27-year-old man from Enoch. KBNU News Time is 4:09. For more details on these and other stories, visit CacheValleyDaily.com.
News Talk KBNU 610 AM and 102.1 FM.
If it's leaking, replace it. If it's worn, replace it. If you're constantly worrying about it with every windstorm, replace it. What are we talking about? Your roof. Palmer's Metal Mart is your place for a long-lasting, great-looking metal roof for your home, cabin, barn, or shed. Metal roofing is the put-it-up-and-forget-about-it roofing solution. For almost 30 years, people have chosen Palmer's Metal Mart for metal roofing for their selection, price, and most importantly, the professional help you get with your project. From start to finish, Metal Mart can help you with all the options for your amazing metal roof. Whether it's an accent on your roof or a complete re-roof, Palmer's Metal Mart is the place to go. Metal provides a unique and timeless look that gives the wow factor to any project. So come see the metal roofing experts at Palmer's Metal Mart, located in Lehigh and Logan. We're ready to help. Ask about quick same-day will calls or delivery to your door. Palmer's Metal Mart, everyone's metal store.
Hello, this is Deputy Solano with the Cache County Sheriff's Office inviting you to this year's truck pull for Special Olympics Utah. This year's event will be held August 19th from 9 a.m. to 11 at the Cache County Fairgrounds. We're looking for teams of 10 individuals to compete in pulling a fire truck 20 yards. Cost to register is $200 per team. To sign up or get more information, look for the Cache County Sheriff's Office's Facebook page. There will be lots of fun prizes and giveaways, including concert tickets to Cherry Peak, a $500 gift card to Costco, cool merchandise from Camp Chef, and much more. Again, come out to the truck pull August 19th from 9 to 11 at the Cache County Fairgrounds.
For the people.
We are waiting with bated breath for news from the Cache Republican Party meeting an executive committee tonight.
With Jason Williams.
And I'm really excited about this next segment. We have two guests here in studio. We're going to talk about something that we've talked about many times here on the show, but from a bit of a different angle.
Weekday afternoons from 4 till 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM.
Welcome to KVNU's For the People. It's a beautiful Monday, August 14th. I'm Jason Williams, Bill Walter here in the studio as well. Sad news on a couple of different fronts, and I promise you the whole show today won't be sad, but we're going to talk a little bit about some of the footage that has made its way out of Maui in the Hawaiian Islands and Maui. Let's just start over. Can we do that? Can we rewind and just restart the show? Yeah. Welcome to KVNU's For the People. I'm Jason Williams. Kauai. It's we'll talk about it. What it would be like. What the authorities are saying now. The FEMA estimates on recovery. All of that has come out over the weekend. So we'll dig into that a bit later this hour. I wanted to start off with this bit of news. Over the weekend, news out that a man here in Utah, who lived here in Utah and had for quite some time, despite living elsewhere in the past and serving in the military, of course, but he'd been living here in Utah, and Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson tweeted this out over the weekend and talked a bit more about it even just today on her official Twitter account. She tweeted out over the weekend on her personal account. Today on her official account, she memorialized a man named Peter McDonald, who she had a chance to meet, she said, in January. Lieutenant Governor Henderson had spearheaded an effort with funding from the legislature that the governor's office had kind of pushed for to branch off a project, long overdue project, to get a water and sewer system out to some of the areas where the tribes in Utah in the southeastern corner, kind of where Bears but Bears Ears National Monument is, but also outside of that, there were towns here in Utah that were either on tribal land or just off of tribal land, but filled mainly with the Navajo people and other tribes as well in some parts, that didn't have running water or sewer. And so Lieutenant Governor Henderson became sort of the primary driver of getting some funding set aside by the legislature to build some infrastructure in the area. Long overdue. Just something we don't think happens, but it is happening right here in Utah, and it still does. This wasn't a magic instant fix, but thankfully the project has begun at least. And she said during that effort, some of the press trips they did and some of the tours that she got of some of the areas that will be helped by the funding, she said back in January, on one of the last trips she made down to the southeastern corner, she got to meet Peter McDonald himself. Again, he was living here in Utah, and he was one of the last code talkers. Remember, if you've heard the history, the code talkers, this is they actually used Navajo language and Navajo code based on the Navajo language during World War II to talk about some very sensitive things, from military plans and specifics to it was actually used during some of the discussions over whether or not to use, timely, with Oppenheimer still in theaters, to use the atomic weapons. And so this was an important, some say integral part of World War II, the U.S. effort in World War II at least. McDonald was, he tells his own story in a much better way than I'm going to be able to do it, but he was born let me make sure I'm saying this right. I've heard it pronounced before. I'm going to murder it, though. Hashkazit Begay, which is a sort of a subset tribe of the overall Navajo tribe. And he was raised with shepherds. He grew up, with nomadic shepherds, basically. And he was trained in his youth as a medicine man. That was his intended role within the tribe. But at the age of 15, he says, when he was punished, actually, at the Shiprock Indian Boarding School in southern Utah, he was punished for speaking Navajo publicly. That was against the rules, because the whole point of the Indian boarding schools was to destroy the culture and integrate them fully into white culture. He said he was so mad about that he just ran from the school and ran straight to the military, to the armed forces. He was 15, lied about his age, and became a soldier. This is no joke whatsoever. So he lied about his age at the age of 15, became a soldier, and then was an integral part in both the use of, but also the development of implementing the Navajo language as a code during World War II, and that's known as the Code Talker program. There have been a couple of great movies and some really good documentaries made on this, but Later on in life, McDonald served as Navajo Nation tribal chairman for 4 terms, which set a record. That was from 1970 to 1986. And he was big on telling tribes they needed to be self-sufficient and to, look out for each other, build up their own communities, and stop, stealing from each other. That was one of his campaigns, actually, he ran on, is, look, we're stealing from each other and this land and everything, and this is something that happened to us already and put us on these reservations. And it was a popular message, and he was a popular tribal chairman, again, setting a record, serving 4 terms. No one else had done that before or after. And he also did a lot to bring public education and funded with various mineral leases, which that was kind of controversial. He co-founded something called the Council of Energy Resources Tribes, CERT. That was in 1975, and that accelerated development of some energy resources that were on tribal lands, which McDonald said, not the way he'd prefer to do it, not a very Navajo thing to do, he said, to exploit and strip the land, but he said it allowed us to build schools, it allowed us to have a seat at the table with state legislatures in the West when they would just ignore us before, and also helped, alongside the Bureau of Indian Affairs, fight against various federal attempts to encroach on tribe sovereignty, which is something that never really ended. It's been a while, but still. And this was interesting. I didn't know this, but McDonald was actually a member of Richard Nixon's committee to re-elect the president. He was invited by Barry Goldwater himself to speak at the 1972 Republican National Convention. There's video of that. It was televised, but he was a big fan of Richard Nixon. But the reason was interesting, too. He wrote about this in his own memoirs. He said Nixon's support of the Navajo position in a land dispute with another tribe didn't impress McDonald, but he was impressed that Nixon wanted to learn more about the battle between the land squabble between the Navajo and the Hopi. And this was in the Utah, Arizona area where this was playing out as well. And he at the same time met Democratic presidential candidate George McGovern, he writes in his book, and was unimpressed. Said the guy already seemed to act like he knew everything, which, I mean, ironically, McGovern did. but that still put McDonald off, and so he jumped on Team Nixon. So... and then later, they had a falling out, Nixon, and McDonald was famous for hating Goldwater. Said after he got to know him, he just couldn't like the guy. And it was, but still, he delivered about 10,000 Navajo votes for a governor's race that was basically revenge against Goldwater. He didn't like him. And he helped to elect, basically, with the Navajo vote jumping in, Raul Castro as governor of Arizona. So he was pretty political. He described himself as an apolitical person. He said he hated politics, but he said he understood that those were the mechanisms you had to use to get things done, so he learned to be good at it, although he never liked it. So, it's an interesting... history that he had. More ties to Goldwater. This is interesting as well, a story that's rarely told, but Goldwater was so mad at McDonald for that governor's race in Arizona where he kind of thumbed his nose at Goldwater and then won, or helped another candidate win, that Goldwater hadn't backed either. Goldwater actually initiated an audit of tribal, like a revenge audit of tribal finances. And McDonald was actually charged with falsifying travel vouchers. It was a misdemeanor. He didn't serve any jail time, things like that. But he did push it all the way to court, claiming his innocence, and was in court acquitted. And then Goldwater was accused of putting his thumb on the scales with the audit, telling the auditors, find something, even if it's barely true. McDonald was famous for being quoted in the New York Times saying, the prosecutors were dupes. Why would you listen to this man? He's a failure. Goldwater, I guess, just never let it go. Hated McDonald till the day he died, according to the Goldwater history books, at least. So a man with a really interesting history, to say the least. And the Navajo Tribal Council, in the end, pardoned McDonald, even though he was acquitted in federal court. The Navajo tribe also said that they were pardoning him, and he was able to go back into service. So checkered past, to say the least, but a really, really interesting guy. And he was, sadly, after all of this, he was actually charged. Well, he was embroiled in something that became known as the Peter McDonald riot. It was McDonald and a bunch of others were accepting kickbacks from contractors through this energy development, and it came out, and the tribe just let loose, and McDonald that time was actually convicted of defrauding the Navajo Nation, and he only served a few months in a federal prison, and that sort of ended his career. He was tainted after that. Although President Clinton, it was just before he left office in 2001, before his final month was over, he commuted the sentence and basically pardoned McDonald and dozens of others in the same thing, saying, it was ugly stuff, but people were desperate at the time. The tribe was being mistreated by the federal government. Anyway, so again, a man with a pretty checkered past, but man, what an interesting story. And sadly, it is, it was Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson tweeting this out over the weekend, saying that, meeting him was absolutely one of the most amazing things that she'd ever had, being able to have a long conversation with him, and was sad to hear of his passing. So links to the Lieutenant Governor's tweets and some of the stories she told about her conversations with McDonald, one of the last known Navajo code talkers, and one of the most important, actually, helped develop the program. So check it out. Links on our Facebook page, and we'll be back right after this.
Don't let concerns about today's events derail your long-term financial strategy. Edward Jones Financial Advisors can help work with you to understand today's financial landscape and how to be positioned for the long term. Edward Jones can give you the tools for a reasoned, disciplined approach to investing. Get started by calling one of the 7 Edward Jones locations in Cache Valley. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Hi, this is Gordon Deal. Tuesday on This Morning, America's First News. The shadow of the 2020 presidential election in Georgia will be felt next year, regardless of the legal problems facing Donald Trump. We'll explain. Also, San Francisco is trying to stop more businesses from leaving because of crime, homelessness, and a tech transition. Here are the strategies. And what's behind ER visits from dog bites lately. Tuesday on This Morning, America's First News. From 4 to 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM. Your station for news and talk.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. I don't know if folks have seen all of it. If you don't want to, I understand. But just over the weekend, I'd followed the story throughout the week. But the Maui fires update, I got it right that time. I didn't say the island of, but this, or I didn't say Kauai. This is, I don't know. You hear wildfire. We're used to wildfires a bit, I think. So, at first, I think for myself at least, it didn't really set in what we were talking about here. But seeing some of the video, hearing some of the stories that have been told, 96 dead as of right now. That's expected to continue to go up. Just a trail of death and destruction. And a lot of people wondering how this happens. basically, Hawaii has been suffering drought as well. Things are, when we think of Maui, when we think of Kauai, when we think of the smaller islands outside of the more populated Oahu in Hawaii, you think of lush, kind of tropical jungle kind of look, right? But things have dried out quite a bit, and you can see that in some of the pictures. In fact, there are some satellite images that were shared by a climate change organization a couple of months ago before this happened. But devastating wildfires. I've seen words like astronomical, unimaginable, all these types of things. But FEMA says the recovery costs of this rebuilding, just this, admittedly kind of small area, could be upwards of $7.5 billion. The price tag on that is is mostly because everything's gone. The roads, there aren't a lot of roads on any of the islands in Hawaii, but the ones that exist are extremely important, and they're gone. This fire burned very hot and very fast, and the scale of the disaster itself, hitting one of the most populated areas on that island and burning as fast as they did, it's just the amount of property damage alone is hard to really put to scale, basically. Everything's gone. And you can see it in some of the videos and images, but stories, too. I don't know if you followed this, Bill, but stories of people trapped, people trying to escape the wildfire, but being trapped. And there's actually video out there of a group jumping in the ocean. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Piling off the pier because the fire is right there.
That's just unimaginable. And that, when you think of
there's
Maui,
nowhere to go.
Maui, you think of, beautiful paradise,
very
clear waters.
And it's not, I never thought we'd be talking, a Hawaiian island at all, but Maui especially, and Kauai with its steep hills, there's concern there as well. Not so much in Oahu, from what I understand, due to the big population there already. A lot of the wildfire risk had been mitigated, but this is an area that was intentionally left natural because tourism is their economy, and that's the part of this as well. On top of the destruction of property, billions of dollars, they say, FEMA estimates it'll be to recover fully the loss of life, 96 as of right now, but that's expected to go up. 96 individuals dead. And then on top of that, for this season and likely into next, if not further, their economy is toast. Tourism is everything over there, and that's on pause now for at least a year. Just honestly, hard to really understand the impact. But we've reached out to some groups here in Cache Valley. One thing I can tell you, if you want to help, don't send things. That's one thing I was told multiple times by various organizations here in Utah. They don't need your things right now. They don't need things sent to them. What they need is money to buy things there. That would help much more. I've linked to a couple of ways you can do that, and we'll talk about it more later on this week with a couple of these organizations joining us here on air. Now, though, a look at the news with KVNU's Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. KVNU News Time is 4:31, and the news is brought to you by U&I Furniture. Motorists traveling through Logan Canyon, US 89, could see temporary delays between Temple Fork and Tony Grove this week. The slowdowns will take place Monday through Friday as ranchers move their cattle to higher pastures. Uinta Wasatch Cache National Forest spokeswoman Kathy Jo Pollock said cattle permittees will be moving more than 1,400 cattle in groups of 200 to 300 over the 5-day period. The cattle drive starts at Temple Fork Road and continues to the cattle guard below Twin Creeks. Twin Creeks is just before you get to the Tony Grove area. It's a little short of the Tony Grove turnoff, which is where most motorists are familiar with. The distance of the cattle drive is about 2.5 miles. It will take place between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. each day. The Forest Service is asking motorists who might travel through the area to be aware that there will be cattle along the road. Even though the highway will remain open, the drive will likely cause temporary delays. The Forest Service also warned drivers to watch out for stray cattle during the evening and night hours and still drive cautiously through the steep curves between Temple Fork and Twin Creeks. A 17-year-old boy was struck during a Salt Lake shootout Sunday morning. Officers with the Salt Lake City Police Department said that the investigation began shortly before 2:30 a.m. yesterday morning, when an officer patrolling the Liberty Wells neighborhood heard several rounds of gunshots. Officials reported that the officer noticed multiple cars and people quickly fleeing the area and then began searching for any involved persons or witnesses of the shooting. Police said the officer located several spent shell casings. Shortly after 3 a.m., officers learned someone dropped off a 17-year-old male at a local hospital with a gunshot wound. The victim's injuries were not considered to be life-threatening. While this incident remains under analysis, officers said that their preliminary investigation suggests that someone began shooting towards a group of people and that 2 others fired back. And this week's confrontation that ended with FBI agents fatally shooting a 74-year-old Provo man who threatened to assassinate President Biden was just the latest example of how violent rhetoric has created a more perilous political environment across the U.S. Threats against public officials have been steadily climbing in recent years, creating new challenges for law enforcement, civil rights, and the American democracy. Experts warn the escalating rhetoric could increase the risks of violence, especially as the 2024 election and former President Trump's multiple criminal trials draw closer. They say lone attackers acting impulsively rather than mass violence, such as the January 6th attack on the Capitol, are the greatest worry. KBNU News Time is 4:34.
UNI Furniture has always been here to give you great value for your money. When it comes to home furnishings, it really is always a better buy at UNI. And right now, UNI is closing out last year's model mattresses. Closeouts on new models and displays, too. Memory foam, innerspring, and hybrids from a number of different name brand manufacturers. And ask UNI to show you this popular copper-infused mattress that sleeps cooler. And did you know UNI has a good selection of sheets and mattress protectors, too? UNI Furniture, over 90 years in downtown Logan. There's always a better buy at UNI.
Some on Maui affected by the wildfires say they're frustrated, accusing federal agencies of not doing enough to help them, like a man who lost his house and his wife is injured, Mike Steffel.
I'm trying to get in to go see my house, and I can't even go see it. And our house, our neighborhood, was the first houses to go down.
Local Maui officials, including police, say some areas are blocked because it's still too dangerous. The number of confirmed fire deaths in Maui has just increased to at least 99. No indictment yet, say prosecutors, as a grand jury has been hearing witnesses and evidence in the Georgia 2020 election interference case. To celebrate a year since President Biden signed the Inflation Reduction Act at an event in Las Vegas, to Republican criticism of the law, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen.
Today, overall inflation and the unemployment rate both sit below 4%. And our economy continues to expand.
The Federal Reserve goal for inflation is 2%. Chuck Severson, ABC News.
KBNU weather for tonight, mostly clear skies, low around 60, and then hot temperatures next few days, sunny mid-90s tomorrow, mid-90s on Wednesday as well. It's been to 87, it's 86 right now at KBNU. UNI Furniture is closing out last year's model mattresses. Lots of choices, memory foam, innerspring, and hybrid models from a number of name brand manufacturers. Always a better buy at UNI, downtown Logan, 28 West, 1st North. And you can always get more news at CashValleyDaily.com. And let's get a Wall Street report brought to you by Edward Jones.
From ABC News, Wall Street now. Stocks rose to start the week. The Dow closed up 26 points. The Nasdaq jumped 143, and the S&P added 26 for the session. The market spent most of the day drifting ahead of a week of reports which are expected to show how strong U.S. shoppers are and if that continued spending will keep the economy out of a recession. But the reality remains inflation is still stubbornly high, and that makes a lot of consumers put considerable thought into even small purchases like a pair of jeans. One consideration for many, how many times they would actually use them. Retailers like Kohl's and Untuckit are taking notice, and they've revamped their marketing campaigns to focus on durability. Regrets? He's had a few. As the Inflation Reduction Act turns 1 year old this week, it's becoming clear that curbing prices wasn't the main focus. In fact, President Biden has said that there might have been a better name for the sweeping legislation. Daria Albinger, ABC News.
Come and see us at Murdoch Chevrolet for our 97th anniversary sales event.
For nearly a century, we've been delivering excellence and quality service to the Salt Lake Valley, and we're not stopping anytime soon.
Right now, take up to $7,000 off a new Silverado 1500.
When you walk through our doors, you feel like family.
At Murdoch Chevrolet in Logan and Woods Cross or online at murdochchev.com.
Chevrolet, find new roads.
Call 866-628-3065 and see dealer for complete details. Offer expires 9/5/2023.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. It's an annual event. It's actually cool to see, but I'm not promoting it that way because it can be dangerous if a lot of people head up to sightsee. But a warning for those who plan to travel through Logan Canyon this week. The annual cattle drive is underway. This will go throughout the week, and roughly, although they can't guarantee these times, they plan to be on the road, causing traffic delays only between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. each day this week. So for motorists, there you go. If you're planning to go through Logan Canyon, you're going to want to do so before 11 a.m. or after 3 p.m. this week. The delays, I've been caught in this before. It's not, it's not an all-day delay, but it's a pretty lengthy delay. Because we're talking, cows walking. that speed, whatever that speed
they
is.
don't walk very fast, usually.
They're easily distracted. Yeah. Very easily distracted. I've seen them, run across headed down the middle of the tarmac, and suddenly one of them, I don't know, they smell something, heads over into the weeds to start eating, and everybody else stops and turns around to come and eat what that cow found. Not as bad as sheep, though. I got caught in that as well.
Sheep are more followers, right?
Yeah, and if one changes direction and that sheep happens to be at the front, all the rest of them are like, wow, she must know something. And they follow that one. But cattle are a little more wandery. It's fun to see, though. It's a lot of cattle. They're moving 1,400 cattle. That's a good choice there. I like that. It's 1,400 cattle.
Did you know Clint Eastwood was in Rawhide? I forgot about that.
I didn't know that until recently. Until someone shared a picture on Twitter one day, and I thought, no, and I Googled it. But yeah, they'll be doing 1,400 heads. They'll be doing 200 to 300 at a time, starting today until Friday. So the cattle drive, it starts at the Temple Fork Road where they come out, and then they take them up to the fake cattle guard there, painted on now, below Twin Creeks. And just
I wonder if any cattle noticed, hey, this thing's fake.
It's funny that those work. Yeah, I miss the old cattle guards. I liked, in my family, it was always, if you don't lift your feet,
you don't want to get stuck in it.
If I've heard variations of this, if you don't lift your feet, the person you marry turns into a troll, I think was one version of it. And I remember from a very little kid just remembering to hold my feet up over every cattle guard. But they're painted on. That one, at least, is painted on now. But they still work. The cows they don't trust it. But yeah, so they move them basically from the again 200 to 300 at a time, 1,400 head total throughout the week. They're moving, and it starts roughly at the Temple Fork Road. And then they go up the canyon towards the Twin Creeks, that painted on cattle guard, which is just basically at one corner, I would say about a mile, maybe 3/4 of a mile from the Tony Grove entrance, down from the Tony Grove entrance, if that gives you an idea of where I'm talking about. So that stretch of road from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. is going to be crawling. I mean, we're talking 3, 4, 5 miles an hour. And it's not a great distance, but it's enough that if you're in a hurry, that's going to put a serious cramp in your day. And no, passing, going around, things like that, not an option. In the past, I don't know if they're doing it this year, but in the past, they'd actually closed the road for traffic coming from the Bear Lake area. The story at CacheValleyDaily.com doesn't note they're doing that again, and I don't know any of the planners involved in this. The Forest Service usually handles it. But that's what they've done in the past, so there would be no traffic. The canyon actually closed for this period of time each day from the Garden City side. They still allow traffic to enter the canyon from the Logan side, but if you get behind this at 11 a.m.,
so just go back to Garden City and have another raspberry shake.
Yeah, just drive. You've got a choice. You can drive along at the pace of the cattle. Now, there are places where they can actually scoot the cattle off the side of the road, and a few cars can go around. But even then, you have to do so very slowly because one might bolt.
They're unpredictable.
Yeah, and then it's also not a guarantee they'll be able to do that. They try to do that, to let traffic, to ease some of the congestion they know they're causing, but that's not always an option. So just in general, it's about 3 miles. 2.5. The CacheValleyDaily.com story says. So it's about 2.5 miles they'll be pushing them. It's not, like I say, it's not going to kill your whole day, but going 2.5 miles at 5 miles an hour, it's a good hour. At least, considering that you're not going to be moving at 5 at all times. A lot of stopping. If you don't want an hour, maybe hour and a half delay in your day, just avoid Logan Canyon between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. each day this week. Finding some classics here.
This is the closing theme of Rawhide. The other one was the opening theme.
I didn't know they had a closing theme. Huh.
Oh, Sheb Woolley was in it, too.
Oh, wow. Rawhide. There we go. That's the part.
Frankie Lane is the one that recorded this.
One other interesting thing about the cattle drive, the Forest Service helps to coordinate this with the ranchers, and a listener asked a question that is right where I was going with this. They said, how do they pick the time? Well, for the ranchers, it's pasture, it's feed driven. They're moving them to higher pastures, basically, for the limited amount of time they can do that. But the Forest Service actually helps with management and communicates with ranchers to say, okay, we're getting kind of in this state in this area, that state in that area, and then they help them move them around. It's careful management. I know some people feel it shouldn't be done in the canyon, but it actually can be done in a way that is healthy for the canyon, keeping grasses down, and the areas where they graze as well are pretty limited. So it's I think it's responsible management the way they're doing it. But and one last thing to mention here: if you've ever been caught in one of these, you know what I'm talking about. If you have ever not been caught in one of these but didn't know it was happening, you've probably seen this, which is unfortunately, it does happen, the occasional stray cow. They try their best to make sure not one goes missing. But again, they're moving 200 to 300 head. They're going to be doing that, I think, twice a day until they've moved all 1,400 cattle and 2.5 miles up the canyon to just below Tony Grove, where they take them off to the left and into the grasses there. There's always that one or two that sneaks off into some trees, doesn't get noticed. They'll catch up with the rest of the group. They hear them at night. They hear them mooing and things like that. But what that does mean, while the cattle drive's going on, obviously it's very obvious there are cows in the road because there are hundreds of them, and you can't miss it. What's even more dangerous, though, is later that night or the following night, that stray cow. So anyone traveling the canyon between now and next weekend, just keep a close eye out. It's sad when you hit a smaller animal. You know, I hit a cat once, felt guilty about it for weeks.
Yeah, I hit a small dog that just darted out across the street. Just felt awful.
It does. It breaks your heart, and especially if you see the kids crying. Hitting a cow or a horse, I mean,
people are going to be crying for you.
Yeah, this is potentially a fatal accident, hitting an animal that large and that heavy and that tall. They have a tendency to come through the windshield. So spread word around. It's not saying it's a super dangerous time to go through the canyon. I'm saying keep your eyes out because there is potential for the next, into the next weekend after this cattle drive wraps up. They go out and double check, and of course they do a head count. They don't want to lose any money, but they do their best. But there is that small chance that there's a stray one here or there that hangs out on the roadway or near the roadway for a couple extra days through the weekend. And they usually don't move around too much at night, but sometimes. Anyway, so yeah, really dangerous thing to hit a cow. So just keep your eyes open if you're going through the canyon, even at nights all of this week when the cattle drive isn't taking place. But the cattle drive itself will take place 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Some great photos from previous years, courtesy of the Forest Service, and more details about how this is all planned, why they go, where they go, etc. in the story. I've linked to it on our Facebook page from CacheValleyDaily.com, and we'll be back right after this.
The landscaping season is now in full swing, and Canyon Landscaping is still booking for this season. For over 2 decades, Canyon Landscaping has been Cache Valley's leader of new and existing home landscaping projects. Spots are filling fast, so don't wait any longer for your outdoor living to become an extension of your home. To get your project going, request an appointment online at canyonlandscaping.com or call 752-3838. Let's get started on your yard. 752-3838. Canyon Landscaping. Look for the leaf.
When a tiny drop causes a ripple and becomes a wave, it travels through all corners of the planet, sustains all forms of life, and provides streams of wonder, rivers of adventure, and oceans of discovery. One drop connects us all. Reserve your visit now to Loveland Living Planet Aquarium, a nonprofit organization.
If a natural disaster comes knocking, how prepared is your family? You can't just close the door on earthquakes, floods, or hurricanes and hope they go away. That's why it's important to make a plan now. Ready.gov/plan has the tools and tips you need to prepare your family for an emergency. So if disaster shows up at your doorstep, you'll be ready. Visit ready.gov/plan and make a plan today. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. Wrapping up here, kind of just a potpourri of headlines as we transition into hour 2, where it's going to be less potpourri headliney. But Bill, you mentioned this. Bill and I both we ran into each other at the county fair. We caught the Journey tribute band, Escape.
Yeah, pretty decent band.
Out of L.A., right?
I think so. Yeah, the real Journey's out of the San Francisco Bay Area.
Yeah.
But
I wonder if they ever run into each other at the airport. Like, hey, wait a minute.
As they're catching flights to a gig or something.
Or on the same plane. Wait a minute.
Well, and I did see
That's
Journey.
my haircut.
Yeah. Says, you're not Steve Perry. I did catch Journey, their real thing at USANA a number of years ago. And, of course, Steve, they kind of parted ways with Steve Perry and went with this Filipino singer after some other ones just didn't pan out before. But they were fantastic to see Journey live. Now, I don't know. This was how many years ago? 6, 7, 8 years ago. So I don't know what they're currently up to as a band.
But
at least there's the tribute bands out there.
Yeah, that's what. And they were good, I thought. But it was interesting. But yeah, as Bill mentioned, he and I did the same thing. Just kind of started asking, well, where are they now? And then finding out there's all this drama.
That's what Wikipedia has just said. One person suing 2 people, 2 others are suing somebody else and a former manager, and they're trying to keep somebody else from touring as Journey.
Yeah, it's really strange, actually. But this led me to this article I've posted on our Facebook page if you'd like to see it. But it was so this was started by some grad students who were working on their thesis, working on a doctorate, basically. And they wanted to be creative about it, and they were working together as a team, and they decided. So they were sociologists, minors, or sociologists. Their bachelor's degrees were in sociology and human behavior. And so they started talking with each other about, okay, what is one of the most drama-infused industries? And so they started doing some research, and this is what cracks me up. Now, obviously, in the top 10 was rock musicians. And they did a lot of interviewing, and they actually interviewed members of Journey, Aerosmith, the Rolling Stones, the remaining Beatles. This research was done when there were still more of them alive, and it was done a few years ago, but about 10 years ago. But they also talked with local longtime touring bands, and what they found with rock music was that it was big egos. Everyone's, especially lead singers, but sometimes guitarists too. They're famous stories about
the bass players. I always wanted to be a bass player because they seem like they're just there, keeping the beat.
They just do their thing
in the background, and I thought that'd be a cool job.
Yeah, was. Speaking of that, Motley Crue's bass player Mick Mars. There was some news last week saying they had to cancel their tour because he's got some health problems, won't let him tour. And I remember thinking, good for him. That guy looked dead in the 80s when he was playing with the. He's still in the band.
Maybe
and
after some
touring.
rest, he'll look alive.
Honestly, he didn't look good when they were a new band.
Kind of like Keith Richards.
Yeah, he was the Keith Richards of Motley Crue.
Keith Richards looked 50 years older in the 1960s.
I think at a certain point, the substance abuse, they've just pickled themselves. And they're just, nothing gets them. So big ego is a big part of the rock industry. But also, this was interesting. They found that when they spoke with a lot of band members, from big bands to more local touring bands that had toured for years, they said a lot of it, too, was there was so much on the line. That little decisions could cost a lot of money. One band member showing up drunk or not showing up to a gig can cost everybody in the band thousands of dollars.
The roadies
and their reputation.
Everyone.
Yeah. Bands telling stories of roadies stealing all their gear and hawking it for upwards of $10,000, which is a lot of money for that roadie, but then the band is done for the year. and they have to go find fast food jobs. And so there's so much on the line that it heightens things. It cranks everything up to 11. But this is where things got it. That was no surprise to me. I thought, thinking about Journey, the lawsuits, all these other bands with all this drama, that makes perfect sense in the rock world, especially as a band gets more successful. There's going to be more on the line. But this is what kind of struck me. So another area where they did some surveying. So they did surveying in every industry they could possibly do surveying in. And they say in their dissertation, this is by no means scientifically comprehensive, but it is a pretty decent subset because they did surveying in fast food, in retail. They did surveying in auto sales, used cars and new car dealerships. They did surveying in media, in newsrooms, at newspapers, radio stations, and TV stations. They did surveying for, self-employed people who work in various industries, as many as they could get, from candle makers to those who are working as independent consultants and more. And, of course, they surveyed the construction trades. And this is what blew me away. So in the rankings that they allowed all those surveyed to make, number 2 in this survey after rock stars for amount of drama a person says they deal with in the average day or week, construction contractors. I love this quote. Everyone on a construction site is a diva with a hammer. That was the quote.
Especially if they're the ones that whistle at the girls that go by, and
That was a quote which he followed up with, "You can use that." That was a quote from a man named Dinozio, Dale Dinozio, who is a framing contractor in Nevada. Says he's been doing it for 35 years. He has run teams from as small as 5 to as big as 65 on various projects. Very experienced man. He said that, in his opinion, he's not surprised at all at the survey results showing the construction trades have as much drama as the rock industry does. Lawsuits, people yelling at each other, marriages broken, friendships ended, friendships made. He said that in his experience, that rings true. And again, he wrapped up his comments in the survey with, everyone on a construction site is a diva with a hammer, and you can quote me on that. Hats off to you, Dale Dinozio, framing contractor from Nevada. I hope they didn't come after you for
he didn't name names,
revealing that truth. But man, what a funny quote. Divas with hammers. Check it out. It's really interesting research. But again, research showing that construction sites, surveys report, have as much drama as rock bands do. I wouldn't have expected.